Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to have our next guest here because we have a little bit of history. We have worked together. Hopefully, we'll be traveling together. And also, we've just kept in touch over the years. And, it's nice sometimes to chit chat and catch up with a friend, but also just talk business, talk life, and all those great things. So I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to be having probably a lot of fun hanging out with Brighde today because not only have we known each other for years now, it's really been a great experience seeing the business grow, seeing really where the business was, especially pre-pandemic. I think for a lot of us, when we think about our business, we think about the evolution. Many of our businesses were in one stage, and then post-pandemic, it has changed. And for some of us, the change has been interesting. For some of us, the change has been painful. And for some of us, the change has been, a pleasant surprise. And what I'm excited about talking about, today with my guest, Brighde, is talking about the world of travel, talking about the world of travel from a vegan standpoint, and also thinking about the world of travel and how do you incorporate things like activism into it. So if you have not heard of World Vegan Travel, today is the day that you should be bookmarking this podcast. You should be going to the website. You should be thinking about what you want to do as far as travel, because the trips, the really just experience that Brighde and Seth offer to the world is just exceptional. But I don't want to jump into too much detail. I don't want to give everything away before I just say hello to Brighde, and then I'll give her a chance to give you guys a little bit of background, and then we'll dive into the world of World Vegan Travel. So number one, Brighde, welcome. So great to see you.
Oh, Stephanie, I am so happy to be here and chat with you today. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So let's just define what is world vegan travel. I mean, most people can kind of assume, but I really think there's a huge differentiation between what you do as far as travel and maybe what everyone thinks. Because often when we think about travel and we think about vegan, sometimes we're thinking about pulling out that backpack. We're thinking about, you know what I mean, jumping, from hotel to hotel. And you know what I mean? It's not so much about the travel experience of where you're staying, what you're eating. Sometimes it's just physically being there. But I think it's something that's super interesting, exciting, and also just makes you really kind of stand apart from others is what you offer, that kind of luxury experience, that 5-star kind of experience that many of us as vegans have kind of, I hate to say, almost given up on, because we know how sometimes difficult it is to travel with food and all these things where we've kind of felt the complications of it all. And I'm just excited to, hear from you how you've changed that, how you've created a travel space, how you've created this travel business that gives many of us as vegans the experiences of a lifetime, and doing it in a way where we're enjoying the culture, we're participating in culture, we're understanding the culture, and potentially doing some activism. So let me hand the mic over to you. Walk everyone through World Vegan Travel, what it is, what you offer, and what you've been doing.
Sure. So, at its most simplest form, like World Vegan Travel creates luxury vegan group tours for vegans and the vegan curious. So, basically, it means we take groups of people on sort of group tours that have been designed by me and Seb, ethical vegans, to take these groups of people on these incredible trips around the world to various different places, various different destinations. And the reason why we sort of got on into this area is before I was vegan in the early 2000s, I was recruited by Intrepid Travel. They are a small group tour company to run tours to various places, and I really like that. I did that for 5 years, and that was actually where I met my partner Seb. He was a tour leader in Morocco, and I was too, and we met and we fell in love. And fast forward 10 years, 12 years, we decided to create World Vegan Travel, and we first of all, we collaborated, and we still do collaborate, but it started with collaborating with Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, a friend of ours, and we took some of her audience to some really amazing places. It was Thailand was our first trip that we did, and people really liked the thing that we did, and we decided to, think, well, maybe this is something that we can do full time, going to different destinations around the world. And yeah, that's what we did. I should add that Seb has a background in production services. For TV, and as a result, he's like a logistics budgeting guru. He's really, really good at that. And of course, my previous experience in leading tours as well, Seb's previous experience leading tours as well, and my education background as well. I didn't have much experience in marketing when we started, but all of those kinds of skills and backgrounds and experience sort of collided to make Well Vegan Travel. And of course, our very much passionate love of veganism as well.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about the experience of it. The reason I bring that up is, when we first started talking, I was like, okay, I get it. Travel, as vegans, or even like you said, maybe people who are vegan curious. But I was so blown away when I started to learn how you do travel, because I think one of the biggest things that many of us struggle with, especially as vegans, is going into other countries and not always being able to experience the cuisine. Often we are kind of, sidelined, and because we're trying to make sure it is vegan, that you're almost regulated to very bare bones, very basic things, and sometimes things that you would just eat at home. So you miss out on that aspect. Can you walk us through how you've really made the food experience not only so welcoming, but something that people rave about?
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned that we wanted to focus on luxury group travel. And the reason for that is that I think it was about 2014 or so, Seb started travel hacking. And for those that don't know what that is, it's basically, using your credit card to collect points in a way that, maximizes the points that you get, and you get to have some, amazing travel experiences. So there was a couple of years where we were doing this, and we were really experiencing some very nice luxury travel experiences that we would not have been normally of being able to afford at that time. And often we would be quite disappointed with the food that we got, and the amount of work that we had to do in order to get what we felt was worth the value of the points that we were spending, less so the money that we were spending, because we were using points, and that was a little bit irritating, I guess. And so we saw that luxury travelers weren't getting the value that they that non-vegans were getting. And we thought, well, maybe if we can just sort of work directly with hotels and using the power of numbers that you get when you are taking over a hotel for 1 week, for example, 25 people, maybe you might be able to sort of leverage a little bit more than you would if you were just a solo traveler. Definitely. So that was, I guess, sort of the main premise behind, what if we could do this? What if we could really work with hotels, work with non-vegan restaurants? Sometimes we go to vegan hotels and vegan restaurants too, and of course that's a lot easier. But maybe there's a way that we can work with these non-vegan hotels and restaurants and get them to sort of up the game a little bit. And with the right incentives, i.e., it's worth their while, and with help and support, they often surprise themselves in terms of the variety of the kinds of food, how they can veganize traditionally non-vegan versions of the food, and as a result, give our travelers an amazing experience where the traditional, the national cuisine, the regional cuisine is actually very, very good indeed, and a really great vegan equivalent of what might not necessarily be vegan in the first place.
And I love that. I love that you're saying that, because it's such a different experience when, especially you've been traveling, you know what I mean? You're tired, you want to come down to breakfast the next day and it be inviting as opposed to it's the part-time job of the trip. You want to come down, and not just that, but the staff is ready for you. They're ready for the questions. They're ready for, things are labeled. It feels like, everyone's working together to have an amazing trip, as opposed to sometimes when you travel, you're almost feeling like the friction between what you're asking, what you're hoping for, and maybe where you're staying. It's creating more of a divide than this amazing experience. So I'm really, really happy to hear how much time you put into that. And anyone who is curious, they can follow you on social media, because it's always great to see the food. Even if I haven't been on the trips, I know what I love looking at it and just being just delighted, a little bit hungry, but excited about seeing those possibilities. So let's talk about the business. Let's talk about kind of the background around it, for a couple of reasons. Because I think for a lot of our listeners, many people struggle with that differentiation. Many people feel like, don't I want to build a business that everyone can, do, that everyone can participate in? Should I kind of create this option where, I'm not restricting this group or that group? And I think for a lot of people, that sends them down a road where sometimes they end up with a business that's so general and generic that it's hard for people to choose them over, other options. So walk through maybe how you made that decision, and how did you gain confidence in saying that it definitely makes sense to go this luxury 5-star route. This is definitely our space. So that, you didn't kind of feel, that tug of war that sometimes us as business owners will feel in our businesses, because we're not sure how to differentiate, not to leave anyone behind, but know that we need to do it. And, we just kind of go back and forth and have that inner turmoil. How did you manage that and come out on top with a unique offering?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it really did sort of come down to personal interest, that we wanted to focus on luxury travel. And part of that is because both Seb and I have traveled a lot through our work and through our personal lives. Seb, for example, he did a 18-month trip where he traveled overland from Thailand to Turkey, only having to get on a plane one time.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't vegan then, but let's just say he did his time of very, very cheap hotels, and he will say quite happily that I've done my time in those kinds of places. I'm a little bit older now, and a little bit the same for me. When I was working for the Trepid, we certainly stayed in less nice accommodations. And, we felt that if we were able to sort of focus on a luxury product, we knew for a fact that that there wasn't anybody in that space. And, we also realized, and maybe there was some luck, and the connections that we had helped in this area. I'm not sure, but the fact that we had this interest in luxury travel, and working with Colleen, whose brand is sort of a little bit more that way, I would say, and also realizing that people who are, generally speaking, a little bit older, they have a little bit more of disposable income. They're often more sort of in a professional arena. They have maybe much less time off than backpackers or people who have a lot more time. They're at a different place in their lives, and they're at the point of their lives where they really just want somebody else to do the work and do the efforts, so that actually when they are on their holiday, they can just sit back and relax and enjoy, and not have to wonder, am I going to be able to find anything to eat? Or, I've paid this amount of money, I should be able to get what I have paid for, and I should get good value for that. And, I want to come back from my holiday sort of well rested and relaxed, and feel like I've had a holiday rather than feeling like I've had to work. I mean, just like anyone really, whether you're vegan or not, once you get to a certain age, if you have the means to do so, it's nice to do that. So does that answer your question, Stephanie?
Absolutely, yeah, because
Okay.
you found specifically a group of people that had a need, that they needed this kind of service, and the idea is that you fulfilled it, and you've experienced it yourself. You've understood, that there is a time and place where some of us want to backpack. We want to stay at, the least expensive hotel possible. I'm only going to be there a few hours. I just need a place to crash, kind of thing. But at certain stages, we want something different, or we're looking for something different. And the idea that having a business that can help that group achieve what they're looking for in a vacation, I think is key. So absolutely, absolutely answered it. The one thing I also want to talk about is the activism side of things. I think when people think about travel, they don't really always think about activism within travel. Also, when running a business, for many of our people who are entrepreneurs who are following this, it's a challenging thing on how do I bring in my activism into my business? Is this the right place for it? Am I preaching too much? Am I doing this? How did you guys kind of manage that and find your way towards what were the right options and ways to incorporate it into travel?
Sure. So I think there's a few things that we do that are it's pretty grassroots, I will say. It's sort of on the ground, working with potential hotels, working with potential restaurants, as I mentioned before, and it's very interesting, just how they react. I mean, for example, when we are going to work with a hotel, we have to find a hotel that meets our needs and that is well located and the right standard and we think is charming and all of those things. And of course, the next question we have to ask is, we're a vegan group. Are you interested in having us? And they'll think about it, and we'll say, well, there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. If you don't know much about this already, these are the kind of standards that we would expect. Are you up for the challenge? And very, very rarely do hotels say, no, we're not. So, the grassroots sort of activism is often, sometimes starting from scratch, like what actually does vegan mean? And then of course it can be, I'm thinking about our France hotel. That's always the one that pops into my mind, because France traditionally does not have many accidentally vegan dishes. I can only think of ratatouille as the accidentally vegan dish that's French in France. And it's connecting them with suppliers of like vegan products, or teaching them or introducing them to certain cooking techniques. And often it's related to finding resources in the language that they are most comfortable in. You can imagine that not many chefs in France would probably be inclined to look at an English cookbook about French recipes. They would want French ones or French YouTubers to follow, for example, things like that. So, it's pretty hands-on. And we've had some really lovely feedback from hotels that they were really surprised at just how delicious the food was, and that you could do this and it was possible. And sometimes it translates to keeping vegan items on the menu afterwards, and hopefully making things a little bit easier for future vegan guests, I hope. So there's that element of it. It's bringing awareness, it's education, it's the fact that we do have certain standards means that that a tomato sauce pasta probably isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
We do want a certain level of things. And also we try to, not only we try to, we do, we make sure that there is some sort of element of animal protection in our trips as well. So for example, we always make sure that we go and visit a sanctuary, and we make donations on behalf of our travelers to the sanctuary that we're going to visit and learn about. And one thing that we do on our trips is all donations and tips, and laundry even is included, so our travelers don't need to worry about that. We say to them, a donation has been made on your behalf to this sanctuary. So that's kind of interesting. And another thing that I really like that we do as well is that we try to invite people who were doing things interesting in the animal protection movement onto our trips to participate in some way. So an example would be in Rwanda, a gorilla doctor coming and doing like a short presentation about the work that they do. And of course, they are compensated, or a donation is made to the organization. So the gorilla doctor does a presentation about the work that they do, which is always very interesting. And then we invite them to have dinner where our travelers can, ask follow-up questions, that kind of thing. Or another example is in, again, Alsace in France, we invited some people who were doing some really interesting things, often very grassroots as well, trying to, work with the local French authorities to try to help veganize school lunch programs, for example. And, it's very interesting to hear about. And, also we give them a little bit of money as well to help them do their work. So I guess those are really like the main things that we do as a company. But we also, something that if people are interested in, is I'm working with other people in the vegan travel space, where we are creating a vegan travel association, and that's going to be doing some interesting things. We hope that we will be able to help companies that are looking to, non-vegan companies, for example, certain brands or certain hotels, and giving them the tools and resources that they need to try to make their offerings a little bit more vegan friendly as well. So that's the Vegan Travel Association. So hopefully that will be a little bit more sort of scalable, and we'll be able to help more hotels increase their vegan offerings.
And I love that, because that allows not only a great experience for when you're there, but it allows you to take those best practices, those things that you've learned, and be able to apply it and then offer it to a larger audience of people who are part of the association to help spread that knowledge. Because I think often these barriers that many of the hotels, many of the chefs, many people have, it's not always that they don't want to do it. Sometimes they just don't know how to do it in a cost-effective way, how to do it in a way that is still in line with their goals. And I think having, the association help with that, and then also through your partnership with them, I think is brilliant, because it, like you said, it allows for scaling. And I think as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we really want to change the world. And to change the world, it can't just be on like, two people's backs like you and Seth, or, you know what I mean? Or even, just everyone who's even in the travel space. The idea is that we need more people, and we have to package that information in a way so that they can spread the knowledge and spread the information. So I'm so, so happy to hear about that. So let's talk about running the business. Let's talk about the ups, the downs, the fun. And also, I mean, you've had some, I'm going to call them recent just because I get so excited about it. But, you've had some recent and even, things that have been spread out over time, just successes that, maybe if, as everyone said, if you were writing a letter to like yourself 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, if you were like, time travel in a sense, and you could say, you won't believe it, but by this year, this will happen. Let's talk through those experiences, those emotions. Let's talk about some of the highs, and let's talk about some of the things that were maybe lows, but how, you managed through those, because I know many of us had lows during the pandemic, especially anyone who's in the hospitality space.
Of course. Well, I do want to spend just a moment crediting you, Stephanie, because I do think the work that I did with you at the start of all of this has put the pieces in place for us to be where we are right now, which, isn't a big, huge business, but certainly doing well, doing better. And, I think when I look back at our initial meetings that we had together, and, we were talking about, doing these, putting together, creating content. And it's something as simple as that. I was like, why do I need to do that? And I just didn't understand. I mean, I had literally never done any marketing before, and it was, I like this thing that you were saying about, you know, being able to send a letter back to yourself and just trust the process. I would say trust the process, because it did take quite a long time for us to see these little wins. And maybe the pandemic was, you know, they would have happened more quickly had that pandemic not happened at the time that it did. But it definitely we are starting to see some wins now. So I did want to mention that, because you were so key in all of those things. And yeah, so in terms, so where should I start? Should I talk about like the wins that we've had and what I think helped make those wins happen? Would that be
Absolutely. I think
helpful?
that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess some wins that we've had in the past year that I think were kind of surprising, and when I look back and um, uh, and then when I look back and think about what must have I done to get those wins. So first of all, the wins. So I think something that really, really surprised us was our little mention in the New York Times about 12 months ago, 13 months ago, I think. It was a big feature that the New York Times did on the topic of vegan travel generally. And, you know, we were mentioned a small bit in there, and we just saw a big jump in the number of newsletter subscribers. And of course, that backlink was very nice as well. And other sort of big sort of wins, I would say, was I was very surprised when Peter put together like a little award where they for animal friendly safaris. And of course, you know, by animal friendlies, it means not putting undue stress on the animals when you're going to visit them. In Africa, for example, there's a small part of it, but it's also being consistently animal friendly by not having animals on the menus and all of these things. And as a result, we were lucky enough to be among 5 companies that sort of won this award. And as a result, we got quite a lot of other press and backlinks, and we were interviewed 5 times in an hour for CBC Provincial Radio just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, these have had some really nice little knock-on effects as well. So when I think about like what must have led to those 2 things, I think it was probably, I mean, I can't know for sure. I just think it's probably a mixture of these things, and just doing them consistently is, you know, just working on our SEO by creating content. It feels like a slog, I will say, when it comes to creating content and trying to sort of rank as high as possible for certain keywords. And I can imagine that the person who wrote that New York Times article basically just Googled vegan travel and had a bit of poke around and saw what was there, and then created their article. That would have been the starting point for who to contact for that article. So certainly, you know, SEO, I'm really seeing that a lot of people who send us inquiries these days are people that have found us directly on Google, which must mean whether we rank high for certain phrases, I would say. And for me, the podcast, my podcast that I have, the World Vegan Travel Podcast, which is just about to celebrate its 100th episode. And it was you, Stephanie, that encouraged me and nudged me through all of those little hurdles and like mental barriers that I had for creating something like this. And now we are nearly 100 episodes on, and this has been really helpful to push me out of my comfort zone and get me talking to people, because certainly in the past, networking felt a little bit fake to me. I've evolved in my thinking about that now. I'm not quite so resistant to the sort of more traditional ways of networking. I can do that a little bit more easily now, and that's probably partly because I've been talking about my business and for a couple of years now, and it doesn't feel so difficult. But the podcast has really allowed me to just connect with so many people in the vegan travel space, and not in the vegan travel space, but in the vegan space as well. And, just by these conversations, they get to know what we do, and I get to know what they do. And, it has some mutual benefits. And, I guess the last thing I would say is just building that email list. This was something that you and I worked on a lot at first. And, we literally started from scratch. And, it's like, what do I put in this email list? I don't have that many things to say. And at first it's hard. It feels a little bit, it felt to me, and it probably wasn't, I would struggle to come up with ideas. And eventually, you start to have created a lot of content that you're able to add this in a way that feels aligned and in sync and helpful, so that you're providing something of value to people, at the same time as helping them to get to know you a little bit more, and hopefully feel comfortable to want to book a trip with us, because our trips are not cheap. People need a lot of, this is something that you mentioned several years ago, and it took me so long to really internalize that, is that people need to feel very comfortable if they're going to drop thousands and thousands of dollars on a 1-week trip. It's a big deal, not only the money, but the investment of their time as well. They only have a couple of weeks holiday a year. They want to know that they're going to get good value from it. So, that was a lot. I hope that was okay, but there were some wins that I've had and some things that I think got me to have those wins.
No, that was perfect, because you gave a great examples and tactical things that people can actually do today, and giving them examples of how that turned out into such, wonderful coverage. And like you said, how that coverage creates more coverage. I think for a lot of us, we forget sometimes that, you don't just have one big thing. One big thing can start to kind of mushroom out into other opportunities, and also create other experiences. And also, I love that you talked about the podcast, because it's the same thing for me doing these podcasts, doing these interviews. It makes me more comfortable in other interviews. It makes me more comfortable in my presentations. It's so interesting how these skills become like transferable into other things, because when you do get, the New York Times knocking, or, when someone says, hey, I want to interview you, you feel much more comfortable being able to talk about it and referencing things. So I'm so, so glad you shared that. So we're a little bit past the half hour, so we're going to probably wrap up here, but I want to make sure that, number one, let's give them the website. Let's give them your social media handles, just so that if people want to get in touch with you, people are interested in travel, interested in the travel association, however they, whatever path they're taking to get there. I just want to make sure they have website, social media, and email address if there is one.
Of course. So it's wellvegantravel.com and wellvegantravel on all of the social media platforms. You can find our podcast. I think that's probably the most interesting way to know, to learn more about what we're doing, but also, meeting other people in a space. That's the Well Vegan Travel podcast. And you can email us at info@wellvegantravel.com. And joining our mailing list, which we have an opt-in on our website. You can just drop me a line and I'm happy to add you. And we send out weekly emails about every week, talking about what's going on in the vegan travel space. And for the Vegan Travel Association, we do have a website, vegantravelassociation.com, but it's still very, very... it's not quite finished yet, so it's not looking brilliant yet, but we do have several events throughout the year. We just finished our Vegan Travel Summit in January, and we'll be doing lots of mini summits throughout the year, so people can learn about what's going on there. Also by joining our mailing list, because of course I talk about all of those little mini summits in our email marketing email newsletter as well.
Perfect. Perfect. I really hope people are going to reach out, start following the podcast, which is definitely, definitely a winner. I think you guys are going to absolutely love it. And obviously, just following you on social media so people can, plan, get excited, and maybe even look forward to hopefully taking a trip with you soon. So, as we wrap up, I normally ask people different things about lessons learned and things like that. And while we can talk a little bit about lessons learned, I did want to touch on one thing that you do that I think is pretty unique in your business is that when you're looking at having a new trip, you gauge interest. And the reason I bring that up is for many people who are entrepreneurs, there's always the hard thing about like, how do you launch a new product, a new service, a new plan, or in your case, a new trip. So I don't know if you want to talk about some of the new trips you have planned and why you have this process in place to help you really solidify what's the next big thing? Because I think there might be some nuggets in there for our listeners as they start to look at new offerings or what to do next.
Sure. So, so a lot of the time when we choose where we're going to go next or the kind of trip that we're going to do next, we will often gauge interest by putting together like a quick little Google form in terms of, are you interested in this destination? How interested are you in that destination? And what sort of things would you like to see included. And I think it just, first of all, it gets people primed and ready, I would say. And we've been able to get some really interesting data from that. For example, we kind of thought, well, that maybe it might be interesting to run family trips, because we knew already that was interesting because we had people sending us inquiries about that. But from this little survey form that we sent out, we found that a lot of people were interested in Costa Rica, and that makes kind of sense, really, because it's not too far from North America. Most of our following is in North America, particularly the United States. It's not too far to travel with kids, and you're not going to have very expensive airfares that with like 4 or 5 people. It's maybe a little bit more manageable for people. And that was really interesting data. And because of that, we're really looking to put together a family trip to Costa Rica in 2024. And we kind of get people sort of sorted out in buckets, for want of a better word, in our email marketing platform, so that we'll be able to let people know specifically who's shown interest, where we are at that stage in the process. And this is also particularly the case for Japan. We've got like 350 people that are really interested in Japan, and we're about to go to Japan to do the research. Japan was closed for a couple of years during the pandemic. I'm sure people are a little bit aware of that. And I'm really looking forward to being able to target them specifically, letting them know updates about where we are in terms of that, giving them some little sneak peek behind the scenes things, bits and pieces when we're doing our scout trip in April, and just getting people ready and excited so that when the trip does go live, hopefully we'll have a little bit of a bang. And we do give these people that have shown interest a little bit of, they get first offers of the trip as well. So they are, in the case of a high demand trip that we hope Japan will be, they will be guaranteed a spot on that because they have been offered it that, and that's kind of like their reward for showing interest in this trip right at the beginning. So I guess that is that's how we've sort of structured it. And it's a lot of fun. And whenever we put an update about Japan, for example, people message back saying, when we want to know, when is it going to be relaunched? We just want to make sure that we're there sitting at our computer at the moment that it gets launched. And to see that sort of anticipation is very comforting and exciting for us too.
Absolutely. That is so exciting. I mean, I think that's kind of like the dream for a lot of entrepreneurs to have that demand and have that interest. And like you said, be able to understand what people want and be able to deliver on it. That's just so, so, so exciting. So I can't wait to hear about the Japan trip. That's one of those like fun facts about me that most people don't know, that like I got one of my undergrad degrees in Japanese. So,
Wow.
yeah, Japan is one of those like second homes for me. It was when I was like 5 years old. I was like, I'm going to go live in Japan and work in Japan. And I got the chance to do it, which was amazing being able to go to, Tokyo,
Wow.
Kyoto, and a couple of other places. So I love, love, love Japan and the culture and the people. So I'm so excited to see when you launch that as well. But thank you so much for joining me today. We went over a little bit, but I expected it because we have so much to catch up on and talk. So might have to have you back again because we didn't cover everything. But it was
Sure.
wonderful to hear about the success. It's wonderful to hear about the work you're doing, like you said, grassroots works around activism. It's wonderful to hear about the Travel Association and how you're working to really scale things and move things to a point where the work that you're doing can go into many different kind of nooks of the world. And as always, it's just great to see how much world vegan travel has grown and changed over the years. It's just such a beautiful thing. I think you have such an amazing business, and then I just think you're amazing too. But it's just been so good for us to chit chat, and I hope everyone who's listening today, whether you listened live or you listen to this as a replay, I hope you've enjoyed it too, because it's so exciting to be able to travel as a vegan, to be able to travel, enjoy the food, participate in the culture, and also protect animals. I mean, just being able to do that is such a amazing thing to be able to do. And for many of us, that was not possible, before World Vegan Travel. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for your kind words. Yeah, I definitely think how you guided me in the first couple of years that we were working together definitely played a huge role into where we are today. Still a young business, but excited about the future. And I just want to thank you for all of the help and support you've given me in the so many ways that you have done that. It's really meant a lot. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And like I said, thank you for everyone who's listening to this. Please, please, please check out World Vegan Travel. You will be amazed and just blown away with what is offered there. So thank you, everyone. I also just want to remind you, if you have comments, if you have questions or anything like that, feel free, put them in the comments. Even if you're listening to this as a replay, we will pass them over to our guests, or we will try to answer them for you and take care of you, because I know not everyone can join us live, but we love, love, love when you do listen to this as part of our podcast, watch these on YouTube, or share them on social media. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on our next interview. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.